Gibraltar wasn't our first choice. We looked at many places, including the Bahamas, Isle of Man, etc., etc. The list went on and on. Eventually, I was told by a friend of mine, Cyril Steen, who was then chairman of Ladbrokes, that there was a license for sale in Gibraltar that belonged to Alex Dembeniotis, who owned the casino. When he was granted the casino license, he was also granted a betting license. He then had no use for it. I came down to see him, and we did a deal in a day.
You encountered a lot of challenges along the way, not least telephone lines and internet connection, not quite what they are today.
Exactly, that was a problem. I mean, it wasn't a problem only here. It was, sort of almost worldwide. But things have changed so much, and the Gibraltar government have always been very helpful in that, in those cases.
Any regrets choosing Gibraltar?
None at all.
You're a very private person. Why have a book written about you?
I feel it's more a social history. It's a history of my family. It goes back really 100 years of us being in the betting business. And I thought something ought to be written for my children and to look at in the future.
Well, racing, very sexy sport. The book reads like a James Bond of the racing world. What anecdote would you highlight?
I suppose the best anecdote that concerns Gibraltar was Michael Carton, who has been a resident here for 25 years, joined me in 95, and we went to Hong Kong to entertain about 300 customers in his third week of employment, and our guest of honour was George Best. Unfortunately, George Best suffered a few problems with the bottle, and he'd slightly overindulged and was definitely wanting another drink when he was asked to sign 100 footballs to be kicked into the crowd at the Hyatt Regency. And I saw him escaping from the room with Michael hot-footing it after him, but he'd arrived at the bar and it was too late then, so I had to ask Michael to sign 98 of the 100 footballs.
How long has it taken you to put the book together?
Jamie Reid has been a friend of mine for 25, 30 years. He started writing anecdotes about 20 years ago. His main interest in what happened on the racecourse, at the races, in the era that was sort of the high time of British betting and racing, which was the 70s, 80s and up to about 94 when really internet betting started to take over. And he wanted to document a history of a family, and he'd written several anecdotes and it turned into a book eventually when I retired.
It doesn't quite get to when you're retired. Could we expect perhaps part 2?
Jamie's already working on it. He's hopeful. He's got a couple of other projects on the way at the moment, but hopefully we'll get something out in 3 or 4 years' time.